Good evening, everyone. A confirmation about the audio, please. If the audio is available. Thank you. So, in general, many of you have been attending, as I can see, many of you have been attending the sessions from day one. So, in your honest opinion, which portion of geography do you think is more interesting? The portion of Indian geography or the portion of physical geography? Where is it that you find more interest and where is it that you find very, very troublesome? Climatology, is it? Indian geography? Physical geography more interesting. Okay. Oceanography. Hmm. Climatology, you find it difficult, Abhinav. Okay. See, in general, in majority of the cases, you will come across the fact that in Indian geography, just because you are able to relate to it so much on a day-to-day life, that is where it is much more relatable in general. But then, obviously, the kind of conceptual layering that you will find in the portion of physical geography, that is not to be found in the portion of Indian geography. So, Indian geography is very much in the aspect of associating with your surroundings, understanding the problems that the country faces. Okay. So, ah, thank you for the very kind words, Jay. But I won't take the credit of the various portions of geography. So here, it is basically once you understand the portion of physical geography, then in that situation, all the other portions of geography is very easily attainable. That is why few of you had a grievance that in physical geography we are moving very slow. And my submission has always been the same, that take as much time as you want in physical geography, because once that portion is cleared, rest of the portions you can easily do it on your own also, because that is where the concepts which are taught, that drives the information about the rest of the portion of geography in general. So whichever portions of geography that you have covered, I would urge you that tomorrow, when the sessions get over, so basically after tomorrow, I till we meet again or till we have a chance to interact again, I would suggest you that kindly start your revision process latest by next weekend. I understand you will have other sessions also that you have to attend, other classes also you have to attend, other subjects also that you have to attend. But always try to initiate the entire revision of it within a week of the completion of the syllabus. What that will do is it will let the portions be very fresh in your mind. So in that manner, slowly and steadily, you will be able to internalize those concepts. And then comes the next phase of proficiency, which is required in a civil services candidate. And that is the ability to interrelate. How is it that climatology is contributing to, let's say, agriculture? How is it that geomorphology is contributing to mineral distribution? Once you gain that level of interlinking, that is when eventually, first of all, it will happen within the subject. Then you will be able to move ahead to the next level where you will be able to interrelate between different subjects altogether. And once you are able to do that, your answers will be a field apart. Just try to achieve that. And once you are able to achieve that, well, there will hardly be any force which will hold you back. It is a very basic key to success, very basic mantra to success. And still, you would wonder why, if everybody knows this, why we have so little number of people succeeding in the examination. That is because it is the implementation which is difficult. Reading a subject for the first time is always going to be very interesting. It is a revision process which is going to be very tiring, very gruesome as well, in the sense that you have to read the same thing again and again. And in a way, People start with that mentality that, I'm so intelligent, I will revise it even after 1 year, that will be work done. But that doesn't happen. Mind has its own way of working, so you will tend to forget. So don't let all this hard work that you have done, sitting through all these long lectures of geography, don't let that hard work go to waste. Start revising as soon as possible. Okay, so now we start with certain of the important crops that are grown in various different parts of the country. And we start with rice. So rice is considered to be a tropical crop. Okay. So Lanki, in previous class, we learned three different types of crops. My question is, the three different types of crops are depending on the climate. So we observed not the three different types of crops, we observed three cropping seasons. So in one cropping season, see, understand, in each of these crops, we'll talk about the climatic conditions required for their growth. So it will not be the condition or the case that wheat, if it requires low temperature, you cannot grow it in the month of July, right? Why is it that wheat is planted in the month of December, November or December? Because it requires in general a lower temperature. So that is why each of the crops, they will have a regionalization also. You cannot end up growing rice in every place and any place. You cannot grow it on top of the Himalayas or in the region of Jammu Kashmir. So that is basically because of the climatic requirements. Okay. Jay, again, that is very kind of you and humble gratitude. Okay. So now we come to the portion of rice here. So rice is considered a tropical crop. Tropical crop basically means typically grown in the tropical regions of the world. And within the tropical regions of the world, you will come across a scenario where the average annual temperature is on the higher end. So that is why you will observe that in the case of rice, generally the temperature requirement is on an average if the temperature is greater than 25 degrees Celsius. That is basically the conditionality for growing rice. Now, it grows very well when the amount of rainfall received is, let's say, 120, 130 centimeter, 140 centimeter annual rainfall. Rice will grow very well. But the lowest boundary limit for the growth of rice is the rainfall of 100 centimeter. Rice will not grow in a region if the rainfall is less than 100 centimeter. Now, here comes the conundrum. Typical regions nowadays where rice is grown is in the northwestern part of the country. That is in the region of Punjab, Haryana, and western UP. Now, in those areas, rainfall received is very, very less. So, the rest of the water requirement is done by what? By irrigation. And the most prominent method of irrigation in that region is basically extraction of groundwater with the help of tube wells and then spreading it and spraying it on the fields. So that is why here it leads to exploitation of water in those particular areas, the northwestern regions of the country that we are talking about. Otherwise, in many parts of East India, especially in the portion of eastern coastal plains, in the region of Assam, etc., the conditions are prevalent almost throughout the year. That is why you will find three different varieties of rice being grown. For example, Os Aman Boro. Now, all these Os Aman Boro, that is basically different type of rice where Os is planted in the month of June, harvested in the month of around September. Aman is planted in the month of August, last July and August, and harvested in the month of November. Boro is planted in the month of December and then harvested in the month of February, March. For example, when we talk about the winter season in the northern part of the country, the region around the Coromandel coastline, the region around the Tamil Nadu coastline, they will receive very heavy amount of rainfall. We do know that Coromandel coastline receives rainfall due to the northeast monsoon, due to the retreat monsoon of the monsoon from the month of November onwards. That is when the Coromandel coastline will receive rainfall. So then you grow Boro in that case. So that is why in these regions, for example, Assam, West Bengal, Odisha, Coromandel coastline, you will come across the seasonality of the rice persistent throughout the year. So that is where it is grown almost throughout the year. So here, basically, if we take a look at the major rice producing areas, India is the second largest producer of rice after China. Production was close to around 128 million tons in 2020-21. Now, here, please don't get worried that here we are indicating the figure of 2020-21 and we are already in 2023. What about the latest data? Give me the latest data. Please understand, it takes some time for the data to materialize. It is the 2020 and 21 data which has been finalized now. Now, after that, the 2021-22, you have the first estimate, second estimate, advanced estimate, and then you have the final estimate. That we will get maybe in a month or two. We will get the data for 21-22 also. But you don't have to learn the exact numerical amount of rice which is produced. Okay. Now here observe that you have these as the major growing areas of rice. Major areas where rice is one of the mainstays and the main crop. And these are your minor growing areas. Minor. Now, here also, think about it. Whenever you have to understand that, or whenever you have to think about it, that which is a major area, which is a minor area, always think about the staple diet of the region. Staple diet is that in general, what is it that people consume? So when we talk about the staple diet of a region, largely it will comprise of the crop which has been growing there naturally and which can grow there very easily. For example, if you take a look at the staple diet across the eastern part of the country, across the southern part of the country, coastal areas, you'll find that rice forms a very important part of the diet. Be it in the morning, the afternoon, or the evening, rice forms a very important part of the diet. So that automatically gives you an idea about the staple or the major growing areas where it grows naturally. Take the case of Punjab, Haryana, Western UP. These are not the rice consuming states. They are growing rice typically in order to fetch money due to minimum support price practices. That is why they are growing rice. These are not the major consuming states. Okay. So that is the aspect of major and minor producing areas. Okay. No, sir, if Rabi crop grown in November, December, so if the weather can't not support the crop season, they growing as well. See, again, I would say, how is it that the weather will not support? In the month of November, December, why is it that it will not support? It can become very cold. It can otherwise bring significant amount of rainfall. If it becomes cold, fair enough, wheat can grow. Wheat is even grown in Ukraine, in Russia. If let's say it brings very heavy amount of rainfall, then in that condition, you might have a crop failure in that case. That is why you have crop failures. But when we say cropping season, for example, when we talk about rice, rice is regarded as a kharif crop, right? Rice is regarded as a kharif crop. That is, it is grown after, let's say, after the monsoonal rains, okay, because it requires moisture. Now, it can happen that the monsoonal rains are delayed. The amount of rainfall which is required, that might be less or that might be more. But in a way, that is the condition which rice requires, more or less, right? It is not as if rice has a fancy list of requirements that, you know what, I will grow in only such kinds of fields, etc. No. Give them moisture, give them warm temperature, it will grow. What warm temperature? So in any area, it is not as if there will be significant departure. If you take 3 to 4 month average climate, there will never be a drastic departure that December's used to be around 5-10 degrees Celsius. This year, December was 45 degrees Celsius. No, Neither will you come across the situation that December, in general, you receive around 50 centimeter of rainfall. This year, you have received 150 centimeter of rainfall. No. Even if there's seasonal variation, let's say instead of 50, you would have received 45. Or instead of 50, you would have received 55. So majority of the crops are able to withstand that variation. In case they are unable to withstand that variation, that is when we have the crop failure. Crop failure also happens. It is in the cases of crop failures that we have the government scheme in the name of Pradhan Mantri Fasal Bima Yojana, or the crop insurance scheme, that if you have the crop failure, the government will pay you money in return of that. Okay. Now, growing of rice in the northwestern part of the country, that is what can be regarded as unsustainable farming or unsustainable agriculture. Why? When we say unsustainable, means what? It cannot be sustained for a very long time period. It has got its own limitations. Now, why is it so? Because here, in this particular portion, the monsoonal rainfall reaches last. It withdraws first. So monsoon in India, for the briefest point of time, they end up staying over the northwestern stretches for the briefest point of time. Now they are growing a crop which requires higher amount of rainfall. So in order to compensate for that, groundwater is being extracted and then that rice is produced. In order to produce 1 kg of rice, close to around 5,000 liters of water is consumed from start to end. Now, all that rice that you produce, it is much more than our national requirement. So all that rice is significantly stored in the various different buffer stocks. But that storage is also a costly process. The storage also has got its limitations. We do not have endless amount of granaries which can store the food stock of the entire world, because even operating these granaries is very, very costly. And we don't allow private participation into that area. So that is why the other alternative is what? So why is it that people here, they produce rice? That is because the government assures you a sum when you sell that minimum selling price. Now, many of the times it has happened. Government, let's say, has bought rice from the farmers at a price of 2,000 rupees. Let's suppose 2,000 rupees a quintal is the price at which the government has bought the rice from the farmers. Now, the international price of rice, let's say, is 1,100 rupees per quintal. Now think about it for a moment. Let it sink in. So let's say the government has bought in rice from the farmers, and the price at which the government has bought, so for the government the cost price is, let's say, rupees 2,000. And when we talk about, let's say, the international market, in the international market the rate is, let's say, rupees 1,100. Now in that case, do you think that government can sell the rice at this price at which it has bought? It has bought from the farmers at 2,000. Farmers have got that money. Now they are rid of that problem. Now it is the government's problem. So government cannot sell it in international market, because international market the price is very low. International market, if the price is at 1,100 rupees, why will someone buy a rice at 2,000 rupees now? So this is being experienced almost every year, due to which majority of the procured rice items, procured food grains, where the procurement price is being increased year after year, you cannot end up reducing the procurement price. That will be a kind of a political suicide, to say the least. So you end up increasing the procurement prices. The international prices, they don't follow the trend. And that is when the government ends up incurring huge losses, very high losses. Overall, very few proportion of the farmers across the country, they are able to avail that pricing of MSP. Majority of the farmers across the country, they don't get paid at the MSP. That is because the government doesn't have the capacity to pay them that much. They, they simply do not have the money to pay. Right? For us citizens, for every problem that we face, the solution is what? That government should do it. But the government also has limited resources. We have to understand that. That is where it is becoming unsustainable. In the long run, it is going to harm us in not only economical perspective, but also in the level of groundwater. Groundwater in the level of Punjab, Haryana, Western UP, they are getting depleted at an exponential rate. You'll find the presence of uranium, traces of uranium, arsenic, fluoride, etc. in the groundwater in that area. And also think about it. Let's suppose we have exported rice from this region, from the region of Punjab and Haryana. Now we have sold that rice to, let's say, a country like Kyrgyzstan or Kazakhstan. Now, have we accounted for the cost of the groundwater? That groundwater which is never coming back? Have we thought about it? Can we say that while we are exporting rice, we are not only exporting rice, but we are also exporting our groundwater? So that is why always in an area, only those kind of crops should be grown which are suited to the natural environment of that area. Then the crops are much more sustainable also. And then overall, the cost incurred will be lesser as well. Okay. Should government purchase at international prices? International prices, they fluctuate. Okay, they keep on fluctuating. So you cannot have the government procurement policy at international prices. Except Assam, why rice is not a major crop in northeastern states? Because these are hilly areas. And hilly areas, they will have a very significant variability of climate and temperature. Okay. So that is the aspect of unsustainability in farming and how it is impacting the overall economic setup of procurement as well. Now we come to wheat. So when we talk about wheat, it requires a cool growing season. And in the initial days of growing wheat, it is generally planted in the or sown in the last weeks of November or the first weeks of December is when it is sown. And when you sow the wheat crop, basically it will take 3 to 4 months to mature, 4 to 5 months in certain cases. Now, in the initial days, some amount of rainfall is required for the benefit or the growing of wheat. And that rainfall, typically in the northern part of the country during the months of November and December, is provided by the rainfall brought by western disturbances. So requires some rainfall in the initial days. Initial days of growing season. That is provided by western disturbances. Okay. That is something which is provided by the western disturbances. Annually, around 50 to 75 centimeter of annual rainfall, evenly distributed over the growing season. Having said that, in the final stages of ripening, at the time when the grains they start ripening, at that time it requires very bright sunshine. Why? Because that is where the wheat crop or the wheat grain is much more significantly productive, or that is what the kind of wheat crop that we need. Generally, when you go to buy wheat in the market, will you ever end up buying the damp grain or the moist grains? No, you will buy the driest of the grains. That is where, at the time of ripening, you require bright sunshine. But sometimes, in the month of March and April, let's suppose, if there is significant amount of rainfall again brought by the western disturbances, that can mean a significant loss to the wheat crop. When you go to the market to sell that wheat, generally the officials, they will measure the moisture quantity, and based on the moisture quantity of the wheat, you will be given a price. If, let's say, the moisture quantity in your wheat crop is less than 20%, you will be given the absolute maximum price, which is fixed. If, let's say, your wheat has got a moisture quantity of around 30%, you will get less amount of money as a return of that. So that is why moisture quantity is very important. Drier the grain, better is the price and better is the grain. That is why unseasonal rains, especially in the month of March and April, that can be disastrous. Okay? Is it possible that government takes over farming land and then, with the mutual steps of farmers and the government, with scientific methods taking all aspects in account, then farming should be done? That will be like the height of the communist movement, even the height of the communist ideology, something that we did not even experience in Cambodia. So a very similar aspect was observed in the region of Soviet Union. Soviet Union did the same thing, where basically government was in charge of everything, right? Be it agriculture, be it defense, for everything government was in charge. And in the final stages of the disintegration of Soviet Union, a stage had come where people did not have money to buy food grains. Food grains were not available because it was not remunerative enough. So that is where you have to understand that when we say government, for us it is a unitary thing, that the government will do everything. But the government also has got significant amount of its branches. So it is not possible. First of all, you cannot take up the land of the private property. You cannot simply usurp private property. That is simply against the norms. Constitution provides that right of private property as per Article 300, if you study carefully. So that you cannot take. Secondly, you cannot end up interfering in the marketing process or the production. Please understand, government has got no business to stay in business. Anywhere across the world, wherever you will find that the government entity has taken over, other than China, because China has a very different norms of functioning. If, let's say, anybody indicates that there is a loss, that person, that entity, and that city might disappear overnight. So China has got a very different norms of functioning. Other than that, across the world, if you take a look at the economic practices, wherever the government has intervened, it has not led to a good result. So always, for economic output, for economic growth, for economic prosperity, always it should follow the norms of market sustainability. That whatever, if there is a demand, there should be a supply. If there is no demand, there is no reason for that supply. If the demand is high, the prices should rise up. If the demand is low, the prices should come down. Okay. Now, here, when we talk about wheat, is western disturbances and westerlies the same? No, not same. Western disturbances, here they are the disturbances created over the region of Mediterranean. Westerlies are prevalent all across the part of the world, across the planet. The westerlies, they are able to carry the disturbances and they bring rainfall, but they are not the same. So there, when we talk about the growth of, let's say, wheat, there are two growing areas, typical growing areas for wheat: the Ganga Satluj plains in the north and the black soil region of the Deccan. That is where typically wheat is grown. So here again, India is the second largest producer of China after China, and overall the productivity was around 100 million tons of food grain. So here again, observe the major and the minor growing areas. The major areas, now, in all these areas, if you will observe, apply the same logic. And the same logic is what? Wherever that crop forms a part of a daily dietary habit, that will be a major growing area. That is why it is a part of the daily dietary habit. Because in any region, the diet that people consume, the staple diet that they consume, they would have been consuming it for decades, for centuries, for generations. Now, always people would, in all parts of the world, people consume those things which are grown typically in that area itself. So here, that is what you will observe in this case, where the major wheat producing areas are largely restricted to northwestern part of the country, and then in other parts of the plains also sometimes wheat is grown. Okay, now then we come across millets particularly important not only for this year but also next year, because India, and as per the request and submission of India, we are celebrating the International Year of Millets in this particular year. 2023 is regarded as, has been regarded as International Year of Millets. Of millets. Now, when we talk about millets basically have been present in the country for thousands of years. The traces of millets have even been found in the ages of the Mahajanpadas, even at that point of time. So, millets have been prevalent for a long period of time. They are also referred to as the poor farmer's friend. Why? Because, first of all, millets don't have a lot of tantrums. They can grow in any kind of soil. If the soil is not very fertile, fair enough, it will grow. If the soil has coarse grains, fair enough, it will grow. If the rainfall is less, it can grow. If there is no irrigation, it can grow. If the soil is present across a slope, it can grow. So millets, they don't require much of a care. Maybe the rains have failed in a year. Rice will fail. Wheat will fail. Millets, they don't fail generally. So there, the millets, they are a kind of a sure shot production. Then other than that, the millets, they are highly nutritious. When we consume wheat and rice, we don't get the nutrient quantity. We get carbohydrates. That's it. But millets, they are very nutritious. They give you calcium, they give you fiber, iron, everything is given by these millets. And also, when we talk about these millets are also the ones which can be used both as food as well as fodder. So remember, when we talk about mixed farming, for mixed farming, it can always solve the purpose. So even when we talk about the small and marginal farmers, if they grow these millets, they will be able to sustain a couple of animals along with the cultivation. And that is always going to give them a kind of crop or kind of an income insurance in the large run. Now, in India, we grow various different types of millets. You have major millets, minor millets, different types of millets are present. It is not a kind of a homogeneity. So, here we will be studying the major millets. So, amongst the major millets, you have the three of them, that is jowar, which is also referred to as sorghum, and then you have bajra and ragi. These are the major millets grown in India. They are considered to be coarse grains. Now, here, major jowar producing areas: Maharashtra, Karnataka, Andhra Pradesh, Tamil Nadu, Madhya Pradesh, and even nowadays in Telangana also, jowar is being grown. Okay, significantly. So that is where this is the crop of jowar. This is how it appears like. And jowar also is now finding its use in the market. You have various different products manufactured from jowar which are available in the market. Then comes bajra. Bajra is also referred to as the pearl millet because of the shape that they have. Observe the grains that they have. That is why they are also referred to as pearl millet. Now, it is referred to as the poor man's staple nourishment, suitable to cultivate even in dry lands. Dry lands basically mean what? Those areas where you have only the availability of rainfall for cultivation. You don't have any irrigation channels which are available. So only you are dependent on rainfall, completely dependent on rainfall. That is the dry land. That is what is also referred to as dryland farming. So completely dependent on rainfall. Okay. Now, here observe that even if the rainfall is as low as 40 to 60 centimeter, right? Temperature between 20 to 30 degrees Celsius, there also bajra will grow quite sufficiently. And to add on to that, it can also be used as valuable animal fodder. Not only will it provide significant amount of nutrition, animal fodder providing income insurance to the farmers as well. Hence, a poor man's staple. So that is to be grown in the region of Rajasthan, Maharashtra, Haryana, Uttar Pradesh, Gujarat. That is where you'll find the presence of bajra. Bajra is one of those items, along with jowar, you'll find to be present in the staple diet in the region of Maharashtra, in the region of even Madhya Pradesh, parts of Gujarat, and even in Rajasthan. Bajra will be a part of the staple diet. And that is the cultural aspect of it. Then, after that, you have another very sturdy crop, that is ragi. Now, ragi is a crop of dry regions. Now, look at the type of soil in which it can grow: red, black, sandy, loamy, black, any kind of soil that you have. Even in the hilly areas where the soil profile is not very well developed, even in those hilly areas, you will find the growth of ragi taking place. Now, ragi is what is also referred to as finger millet because that is how it appears. Now, typically, ragi is something that you will find in prominent quantities as a staple diet to be observed in the regions around Karnataka. Karnataka, that is why, is one of the leading producers. So, in those areas, you'll find ragi as the staple diet. And for Karnataka, Karnataka has been doing some significant work in marketing of ragi for quite a large number of time or a substantial portion of time. So, where not only ragi in itself, but ragi based products that you have, ragi based wafers, ragi based all the various different kinds of things that are being sold after being processed. And following the suit of Karnataka, following the example of Karnataka, many other states have joined in and they have started promoting their own type of millets in that region. For example, if a state specializes in bajra, they have started marketing bajra and so on. This process has continued. But this needs to pick up. Before the Green Revolution, we have talked about the Green Revolution briefly. We'll talk about it again. So, before the Green Revolution, millets were the predominant crops that you would find in major parts of the country. It was after the Green Revolution that rice and wheat they started occupying the scenario. So that is where millets are very important. Now, what kind of question can be framed from here, from the portion of millets, given the fact that we are celebrating the International Year of Millets this year? So here the problem or the question that can be put in front of you is, what is the importance and what is the scope of growth of millets? So when you have this kind of a problem, this kind of a statement, always drive at few of the factors. The first factor, its suitability to grow in any conditions. Second factor, due to climate change, rainfall is failing. Rainfall is being variable and more unpredictable in various parts of the country, leading to crop failures. Millets are sturdier. Millets basically are able to withstand that. So that is basically the advantage. Thirdly, millets can also serve as animal fodder, right? They can also serve as animal fodder, bringing about the aspect of improved income of the farmers. And then you have to drive home the factor of nutrition. India overall has got the highest population of malnourished children across the world. The number of children who are suffering from malnutrition or malnourishment is very high. It is not because they are not getting wheat or rice. It is because they are not getting nutrients. Now, the lack of those nutrients can be supplemented if you start providing millets in their meal cycle. So that is where, even for the future of the country, millets is very much required. Okay? So that is all that you have to write. What is the basic meaning of millets? Millets basically refer to a group of crops, a set of crops, right? Just like you have a crop like maize, a crop like wheat, you have a set of coarse grains. For example, you have jowar, bajra, ragi. These overall, they are referred to as the major millets. You have minor millets elsewhere. Okay, so millets are considered to be coarse grained. Coarse means larger grain size. Coarse grained food crops. Okay, so that is why I've indicated to you the image. This is bajra, this is basically ragi, and this is the portion of jowar. So that is why we have indicated that to you. Millets are also called as shriyan. Yes, that is also called as shriyan. Okay, this is your bajra, hence referred to as pearl millet. Pearl millet. So generally, people would not associate in the different regions and different locales. People don't associate with the aspect of millets. They will associate either with jowar, bajra, or ragi. For example, in Karnataka, you have the very famous, or example, in Rajasthan, you have the very famous bajre ki roti of example. That is the case of bajra. Right. Similarly, that is the chapati is made out of bajra. Similarly, in Karnataka, when you talk about the staple diet, you have the ragi mudde. So these are the balls of ragi which are made. So that is where it is consumed in different parts of the country. Then you have this as jowar, which is also referred to as sorghum. Yes, Vivek, that can also be taken as an example. That is to be found in the region of Bihar. Then you have ragi. That is where this is referred to as finger millet. Okay. So these are your types of millets. Why did we shift towards rice and wheat? The green revolution came in, Vishal, and once the green revolution did come in, that brought about significant augmentation of income also. So when people see that this is a crop which is going to earn you income, obviously people will switch to that. So then we come to another crop, that is maize. So when we talk about maize, so it is generally referred to as another crop which can be used both as food as well as fodder. Now, it is a kharif crop. That means a temperature requirement between 21 to 27 degrees Celsius. However, in portions of Bihar, it is also grown and in the Rabi season. Right, requires an average temperature of 21 to 27 even in old alluvial soil, that is the bhangar soil. That is also where you will find the growth of maize. Now, United States is the largest producer of maize in the world. United States alone produces around one fourth, more than 25% of the global production of maize comes from United States. But there you will never come across a kind of an issue that there's an overproduction, so farmers are getting impoverished. No. That is because in that particular part of the world, you have a significant amount of value addition which is done. The crop is used And the crop materials are used to manufacture a series of various products, from artificial sweeteners to resins to protein to different starch oil to alcoholic beverages to package and paper industries. The utility is very, very high. So that is where, if you carry out value addition significantly, the scope is tremendous. So these are your major maize growing areas. Then we have pulses. Pulses, they form a part of our diet, north or south, east to west. Everywhere you'll find the greater utility and utilization of pulses. Why? Because majority of the part of the country, if you consider, majority of the diet of the country in terms of the staple diet, that is largely vegetarian. Okay, now don't think about it that okay, I consume non-vegetarian food, so I'm not in that population. So if you consider 3 meals a day, 7 days a week, 52 weeks a year, so if you consider like that, majority of the meals that you will consume would be largely, in majority of the population, it would be vegetarian. Now in vegetarian food, the supply of proteins is quite limited. The options are quite limited. Either you get soybean, which is very costly, or you get the supply through pulses. So pulses are a source of protein, and that is why it forms a significantly important part of the staple diet in all parts of the country. You use pulses in different manner. India in it alone is not only the largest producer, but also the largest consumer of pulses in the world. Here we end up producing close to around 25 to 28% of the global production of pulses is carried out by India itself. Now, India consumes all that it produces. That is why any year when the pulses, the crops fail due to unseasonal rains, the climate suddenly changes. That is the year that you will come across that there is a sudden rise in the pulse prices. Okay, and it is a politically very volatile situation. It is a very sensitive issue because it forms the part of the diet of the larger masses. So here, these are the major source of protein in a vegetarian diet. Major pulses that are grown: tur, urad, moong, masoor, peas, gram. So you have many different types of pulses which are grown: black gram, green gram. Many different types of pulses are grown in different parts of the country, and they are consumed as well. So overall, the states Maharashtra, Madhya Pradesh, Tamil Nadu, Gujarat, they will produce pulses. Now, pulses, they can also grow in bhangar soil, can grow in old alluvium. Older alluvium. And they also don't require significant amount of irrigation to be carried out. Okay, they can also grow in areas where they are dependent on rainfall. After that, we come across to one of the water guzzling crops, which consumes water significantly. So that is sugarcane. Now, when we talk about sugarcane, it is again a subtropical as well as a tropical crop. Overall, the temperature required is again in the same range as you would observe in the case of maize, that is between 21 to 27 degrees Celsius. Rainfall, ideally, if it is above 100 centimeter, it grows very well. But if it is between 100 to 75, fair enough, it can grow. So that is the region for, or that is the requirement for growth or cultivation of sugarcane. It overall consumes a lot of water. Lot of water. Okay. Now here, when we talk about sugarcane, India is the second largest producer. Now this ends up varying year after year. So always before going to the exam, check it out. Now, sometimes Brazil becomes the largest producer, then India becomes the largest producer. So there is always a kind of an interchange between India and Brazil. These two are the largest producers of sugarcane in the entire world. Now, sugarcane is typically used to manufacture what? Jaggery. Jaggery is used, and even sugar. Sugar is manufactured from sugarcane. And you have multiple products. But in that production, you have the byproducts which are also produced. For example, you have molasses, bagasse. These are your byproducts. When you extract the sugar out of sugarcane, these are your byproducts of the extraction process of sugar. Now, typical growing areas of sugarcane that you come across, they are to be found in the region of Uttar Pradesh, Maharashtra, Karnataka, Tamil Nadu, Andhra Pradesh, Telangana, and so on. By the way, these byproducts that you have, these byproducts have multiple utilities as well. They can be used in, let's say, biofuel manufacturing. They can be used for paper and packaging material. Okay, there you can use that bagasse and molasses. People tend to say that to produce 1 kg of rice, it needs 5 liter of water. No, 5 kiloliter of water. Yeah. Yes, petrol blending, ethanol blending of petrol program that you would have come across. So these molasses and bagasse, they are used. That is why, in general, in India, majority of the sugarcane that is used to manufacture sugar. Now we have an oversupply of sugar. Sugar consumption across the world overall, as the trend is going in the near term future, sugar consumption will go down as people are becoming more and more health conscious. The sugar component will go down. So as a result of that, when we have oversupply, many of these sugarcane farmers, they have not been given the amount or the arrears for a long period of time. That is why it is always advisable. Even Brazil advised it to India that, look, rather than simply producing sugar, start producing biofuel so that the overall price of the sugar in the international market can come to a stable amount. Because what is happening is India is producing so much of supply in the market that the sugar prices are crashing. And once the sugar prices in the international market crashes, that means sugar is available at a very cheap rate in the international market. That means the sugarcane farmer that you have to pay, you will never pay them adequate amount of money. That is why here, utility of the byproducts of sugarcane, that is very much required. Now, here, if you take a look at it, majority of the sugar producing industries across the country, they have been shifting to the southern part of the country as compared to northern India. And this has been a trend for more than a decade now. Traditionally, majority of the sugar producing industries or the sugar mills would be situated in Uttar Pradesh and even Bihar, Punjab, and Haryana. And here also observe, Punjab and Haryana, here they are growing the crops for which they don't have enough rainfall. So again, it would lead to what? Extraction of the groundwater. Extraction of groundwater, when it happens, the groundwater level goes down drastically. That means, again, you have another set of environmental problems. So generally, it has been a trend for the past few years, more than a decade now, that the sugar industry is shifting to the southern part of the country. And why is that? Shift of sugarcane cultivation to the southern part of the country. Why it is happening? Okay. So here, there are multiple reasons for the same. Observe the conditions required for the growth: 21 to 27 degrees Celsius temperature, 75 to 100 centimeter of rainfall. Now, in northern part of the country, you have a very distinct and an active winter season. During the winter season, the temperature drops. But in southern part of the country, throughout the year, the temperature will be in that range. In some part of the southern India or the other, the temperature is perpetually higher. And that much amount of rainfall is always received because the southern part is a peninsular landmass, so it has got accessibility of onshore winds as well. So here, growing conditions, growing conditions are prevalent almost throughout the year. That means growing season lasts for 10 months or more in South India as compared to 6 to 8 months in the north. Okay? As compared to 6 to 8 months in the north, you have a very long growing season in the south. Now, generally, you will find that in the southern part of the country, because the growing season is longer, the conditions are more suitable. Here, in the southern part of the country, sucrose content, that is the sugar content of the sugarcane is higher owing to a larger or an ideal prevalent condition. Okay? Now, when you have a long growing season, that gives you significant time to carry out the crushing also. Right? When you have a short growing season, you have to get done with the crushing in a short window of time. So that is also a side benefit. But then, other than this, the other benefits are here when we talk about sugarcane, availability of water is more prevalent due to higher rains, higher rainfall. Okay, the rainfall is higher. So that means overall across the year there is availability of water. Then after that, better infrastructure in the terms of road connectivity, etc. Better infrastructure from farm to factory. Because sugarcane is one of those crops that when you harvest, immediately you have to take it to the sugar mill because it will start decomposing very soon. The sugar content is very high, microbial growth will be very fast. So that is why immediately you have to take it to the sugar mill. So that is why if the infrastructure, the road connectivity, etc., it is better, there will be less wastage. Okay, so that means less wastage. Less wastage. Then after that, in the southern part of the country, you have better export alternatives and options available. Why? Because the ports are very close by. Okay. Then after that, you have in the southern part of the country the mills that you have, the farmer organizations that you have. There also you have better arrangement in terms of the FPOs, the farm cooperative societies. They are better arranged in the southern part of the country as compared to the northern part of the country. So efficient organization of farm cooperatives in the southern part of the country. Now, as a result of that, the sugar mills are shifting to the south, and sugarcane is one of those products which will grow very close, or which will be grown very close to where you have the sugar mill, because immediately after harvesting, you have to take it to that region. So that is basically the reason for the shift in cultivation. This was a question that UPSC had asked in the mains examination for geography in GS paper 1. It was a direct question which was asked, and that is the answer for that particular question. Okay. Water availability is not much significant as in the case of northern part. No, the contrary of it is correct, Jay. See, water availability through rainfall is prevalent almost for a major portion of the year, either by advancing monsoon or by retreating monsoon. It is in the northern part that nowadays we are experiencing scarcity of water, failure of rainfall. You would have heard about rainfall failures in central part of the country and northern parts of the country. Have you ever heard that in the southern part of the country that rains have failed? Because even if there is a lack of adequate rainfall, you will have enough rainfall being observed in the portions, the coastal areas, and the areas slightly in the hinterland, because very close to the coastline. Okay, I hope that is clear. Now, then we come across plantation crops. So what do we mean when we talk about plantation crops? So these are the types of crops that are grown over very large areas, very, very large areas. Single crop type that we have discussed, large amount of labor force required, capital intensive cultivation, lot of pesticides, chemical treatment, etc. You have to carry out periodic treatment with sprinkler irrigation, etc. At the same time, you have to ensure that no pest infestation takes place. So it is significantly capital intensive, but the profit on is also huge. So here, amongst the plantation crops in India, you have various types. You have even coconut in regions of Kerala. They are grown as plantation crops. Coconut requires moist conditions, higher temperature. You have rubber. Rubber is cultivated as plantation crop. Cashew. You have tapioca. You have in that manner banana also. So these are grown in large numbers. But the major ones that we are going to talk about, that is basically going to be tea and coffee. Okay? Tea and coffee. Now, tea is basically going to require close to around 150 to 200 centimeter of annual rain. Generally, it is safe to say more than 150 centimeter of rain, greater than 150 centimeter. Now, that much amount of rainfall will be required. So that already narrows down the area where you will find the tea in existence. Then, no standing water. No standing water. Now, if you have that much amount of rainfall and the water should also not be stagnant, then what kind of a landform will give that kind of an opportunity or that kind of a condition? Where the land is sloping. So if the land is slanting or a hilly land, there you will receive rainfall, it will drain off. So grows well on slopes. Well on slopes. Then after that, you also have temperature. Temperature required for the growth of tea will be roughly in the range of around 21 degrees Celsius to around 28, 29 degrees Celsius. In that temperature, tea grows particularly well. Okay. Then other than that, so in which areas do you find the growth of tea? So you'll find it in Nilgiris in South India. Nilgiris. Now, Nilgiris, they are present in some part of Karnataka as well, some part of Kerala as well, some part of Tamil Nadu as well. So, in the region of, let's say, Udagamandalam or Uti, all the way to Munnar, let's say, when we go in Kerala. So, in that entire stretch of the Nilgiris, you will find large tea plantations, right? Similarly, tea plantations can also be found in some portions around Chikmagalur and so on in Karnataka. So that is where in the entire stretch of Nilgiris, you will find this. Other than that, Himachal, then you have West Bengal, northern portion of West Bengal, around Darjeeling. Then you have Assam and other states in northeast, right? So other, so for example, some amount will also be grown in Tripura and so on. So that is where you will find tea cultivation. So here, let's write, etc. Ladakh, you won't find the growth of tea. Ladakh is a kind of a cold desert. Okay. Then we have coffee. Now, coffee also requires around 150 centimeter of annual rains. 150 centimeter of annual rains. Now, in this case, temperature required. Here also grows well on slopes. Grows well in hilly areas and slopes. Then here you will come across the fact temperature required is generally between 25 degrees Celsius to maybe even 32, 33 degrees Celsius. There also coffee will grow even up till 35. It will grow very easily. Now, the one differentiating factor, if ever you have visited a tea plantation and if ever you have observed a coffee plantation, you will come across a very distinct difference between them. While tea is planted openly out there in the open, coffee always grows in the shade. Always grows in shade. That is why when you go to a coffee plantation, for example, if you go to the region of Coorg in Karnataka, in the Kodagu district nearby, so there you will come across endless amount of coffee plantations. If you go to Wayanad in Kerala, there also you will come across endless amount of coffee plantations. So there you will always observe that you have very large trees, and under the shade of that tree, you have these coffee plants and the coffee beans which are growing. So it is in these areas where you will find the growth of coffee. Always grows well in the shade. Okay. Typically, again, to be grown in the region of the Nilgiris in southern part of country. So areas around Nilgiris, around, let's say, Coorg in Karnataka. You also have Chikmagalur, again in Karnataka. Okay. Then Wayanad, Kerala. So these are few of the areas, right? So that is where you'll find the growth of coffee plantation. Okay. Then we come across what are referred to as fiber crops. What do we understand by fiber crops? So fiber means what? That these are the crops which can be utilized in order to make some fibers out of it, right? You can utilize these crops to manufacture fiber. So that is what is fiber crop. So even for example, fiber which can be used for, let's say, clothing apparels, for example, even for your carry bags, merchandise items, jute bags, etc. Those are basically the outcomes. So even coconut, the ripe coconut, the outer shell of it, that can also be used as a fiber. Hemp that you have, the cannabis plant, now that hemp is also typically to be growing in moist regions which lower temperature, so they will be growing on the roadside, so there also fiber can be extracted, and hemp is in great demand nowadays because it is considered to be as an alternative to jute, alternative to plastic, and at the same time sustainable for the environment as well. So here, in the case of the fiber crops, let us analyze the major ones, that is cotton and jute. Kiran, uh, you have your exam tomorrow. Okay. Again, Kiran, I would see whatever amount of advice I can give you. Let me tell you one basic fact before you go into the exam hall tomorrow. Regardless of whatever preparation you have done, regardless of whatever preparation all your competition has done, overall, there is not much of a difference if you have been true and honest. There is not much of a difference in the level of preparation. The difference is created in the exam hall itself. Please keep that in mind. Please listen to this carefully. As of now, it might appear to be very shallow and tangential. That how come he's saying that difference is created in the exam hall? Last month I partied, whereas my competition was studying. Regardless, at max, whatever someone has studied for, let's say 15 days more, that might give them an edge over 4 to 5 questions. But there are other 95 questions to play with. Okay. So the level of preparation is largely going to be the same. What determines success in prelims is very simple: belief in yourself. Always believe in the preparation that you have carried out. And trust me, if you have followed the classes regularly, your content material would be high enough. So have that self confidence that if I'm finding a question very difficult, everyone will be finding that question very difficult. It is not going to be that I am finding it difficult. And follow a very simple strategy. In the first reading, you will do around 40 to 45, 35 to 40, 35 to 45, in that range. There also, there will be 4 to 5 mistakes. Next 20 to 25 questions that you will appear for, use your logic. Calm yourself down, repeatedly calm yourself down. Please understand, this is an exam for just another job. This exam is never going to define who you are. And always remember that who you are is actually going to define the preparation and the strategy that you follow from now on. There are endless examples of candidates who knew as less as 20, 16, 15, 25 questions. They have cleared prelims with very good marks. And not by the Tukkafai method that I will take B, C, like that. No, they have applied their logic. That is the kind of individual that UPSC is searching for. Apply your logic on the questions there. You have the 2 hour time window. There is going to be no interference. It is going to be you and the question in front of you. Develop that kind of an outlook that whatever the answer is, it is in front of me. Out of the 4 options, that is where the answer is hidden. I have to find it out. And at the end of the day, regardless of whatever happens, at the end of the day, it is an experience gained, right? Go with that approach, and you will find yourself to be a happy person after the prelims examination. Okay? So, all the best for the examinations tomorrow, Kiran. And I hope that tomorrow's experience is good. It is not about whether you qualify or not qualify. Prelims, qualification of prelims on that day might eventually boil down to luck for that matter, right? But then you might come across a set of questions in the first page itself that you have never heard of. So don't worry about that. Think about the experience. You are appearing for civil services examination. It is as good as it gets. There is no better platform across the entirety of the world to prove yourself. So think about the experience that you will gain. Don't think about the outcome. You might succeed, you might fail. Regardless, tomorrow's experience should be good. With that, go with a clear head, and eventually, after you come back, we will have the live session on YouTube about the questions. Even if, let's say, you are too tensed about it, relax for a couple of days, get back on the saddle again, and start preparing. Okay? So, all the best for you. Now, after that, we continue with the portion of fiber crops, and there we take the case of cotton and jute. Okay? Do we need a break, guys, or do we carry till 8 p.m.? If you need a break, now is the time to take a break. We won't be taking a break at 7:15 and so on. So please let me know. Okay. Okay. 10 minutes break will do. I'm not keen to carry on a 15 minutes break because it will be a long period. 10 minutes break? Okay. So we'll take a 10 minutes break. No, Sai. So 15 minutes is long. Yes, Kiran, don't worry about it. See, and please understand, regardless of how much motivation you drink up, tomorrow morning you will feel anxious. And that is the beauty of it, right? It is your day. You are going to perform tomorrow. That is the beauty of it. And don't worry about the outcome at all. Civil services examination will never define. This is just another job, another exam for just another job. All the best. Okay. So we'll take a 10 minutes break. We'll be back very quickly, and then we will continue. Or do one thing, be back at 7 p.m., regardless of how much time, and we'll carry out from 7 p.m. A confirmation about the audio, please. If you're able to hear me out perfectly well, kindly confirm the same. Thank you. So now we look at the crops of cotton and jute. So, starting with jute. So, when we talk about jute, basically, this grows well. Again, it requires a rainfall of close to around 150 centimeter. Requires more than 150 centimeter of rains. And these rains need to be distributed. So you do require some amount of rains in the month of April, some amount of pre-monsoon showers also, some amount of monsoonal showers also. And in general, you will find that even for the processing of jute, you require a lot of water in general for the retting purposes, for the cleansing purposes, etc. So that is why mostly the jute growing areas you will find across the region of river plains and around the river areas. So mostly grows in fertile river plains. Then after that, you also have the requirement of fresher alluvium, of fresh alluvium, or rather than fresh, let's write newer alluvium. Or I hope by now we do understand newer alluvium and older alluvium. So khadar soil, newer alluvium. Temperature in the range of 25 degrees roughly to roughly around 30 degrees Celsius, 30, 32 degrees Celsius also it will grow. So which are the areas where you observe the growth? Areas you will observe Brahmaputra plains of Assam, West Bengal significantly, Bihar, the eastern part of Bihar across the banks of river Ganga, parts of Jharkhand and Odisha. There you will observe the growth of jute as a crop. Now, when we talk about, let's say, cotton is a kharif crop. Okay, kharif crop. Growing season or the growing time is around 6 to 7 months. In that growing time, it requires a frost-free condition, that the ground should not get frozen or the temperature should not dip so significantly that there is frost development on the leaves. So it requires frost-free conditions. Can be grown as a rain-fed crop. That means it doesn't necessarily require lot of irrigation. Without irrigation facilities also, it can grow. Grows well, in fertile, alluvial, and black soil. Okay. Then overall temperature higher than 22, 21 degrees, and roughly up till around even 32 degrees Celsius, 33 degrees Celsius also it will grow. So areas: Deccan Trap, Malwa Plateau, that is Madhya Pradesh, Gujarat significantly, parts of Andhra Pradesh, parts of Punjab, southern Punjab, mostly the Doaba region of Punjab. Okay. So these are the areas. Now, UPSC had asked a question from this particular portion in 2021, where in the long passage it had said that this is a kind of a crop which is grown immediately after the monsoonal rainfall. This is a crop which requires 210 frost-free days for growth, which is the crop that we are talking about. This doesn't, or this is not dependent on irrigation and so on, which is that crop. So it is basically the crop of cotton. Okay. So that is the aspect of the fibrous crops. Growing time for jute is around 5 to 6 months again. Okay. So that is basically the cotton and jute crop. Now, after that, we come to the portion of sericulture. Sericulture. So you are rearing something. So sericulture is basically rearing of silkworms in order to extract the silk thread. That is sericulture. Now, when we talk about sericulture, you have to understand that these silkworms, how is it that the silk is produced? I'm sure you would know it and you would have read it. Just to have a quick recap. So basically, when you have the silkworms, they consume significantly and they engorge significantly on the leaves. Now, these silkworms, in their growing phase, they are able to consume the leaves almost equivalent to their body weight itself. So that much amount of leaves they are able to consume. Imagine, for example, let's suppose your weight is 60 kilos and you are able to consume food of 60 kilos, right? That kind of engorgement of food happens. Now, as it starts growing, over a period of time, then it wraps. Now all the worms, before they turn into butterflies, many of them basically, before they turn into mature adults, they basically, as an insect or something like that, they will wrap a cocoon around them and they will then metamorphose inside that cocoon. They go for a long sleep cycle where their body metamorphoses and changes shape. So these silkworms, they wrap a cocoon around themselves and they go for that particular phase transition. It is at that stage where the cocoon is taken, put in boiling water, and very slowly that cocoon is extracted, or that cocoon is entangled thread by thread. And that thread gives you the silk overall. So that is basically what you observe as the aspect of sericulture and the growing of silk in general. So here, when we talk about the silkworms, the type of leaves that they will consume, that type of leaf is very important in order to take the category of silk that is generated eventually. For example, the most predominant variety of silk is mulberry. And that is because these silkworms, they gorge on or they feed on the mulberry leaves. So accordingly, you have the mulberry silk which is extracted. Silk industry is a very labor intensive industry. It provides employment and employment generation for a large section of the population in general. So that is why it is important for the job creation. In India, all the four major types of silk to be grown in India, you will find mulberry, muga, tassar, and eri or inadi silk. Now, mulberry silk is the most predominant variety, and this is to be found across the various parts of the country. They feed on mulberry leaves. This mulberry silk is used for manufacturing of clothing apparels. Significant amount is used for manufacturing of clothes and merchandises. Muga. Muga silk is also what is referred to as royal silk. That is referred to as royal silk. That is typically grown in the portion of or reared in the portion of Assam. Now, the silk which is manufactured is off-white in color, not very brightish, very hard to maintain. So that is why this is a kind of a silk which was traditionally adorned by the royal households, the royal Ahomian households. And that is why the name royal silk. Then you have the Tassar silk. Tassar silk is also referred to as the wild silk. Because in this case, the silkworms will basically eat upon any kind of leaves and they will produce that silk. Obviously, the variety and the quality of silk is not as fine. So that is why traditionally tassar has been used for other purposes other than clothing. For example, for your interior decorations, for example, right? You have the curtains, you have the various different let's say covers, etc., that you design. So all of that is the utility of tassar. However, now that the processing facilities have evolved and improved to significant extent, so that is where you'll find that even this tassar silk is significantly utilized in order to manufacture clothes nowadays. But traditionally, it is referred to as a wild silk. Then you have Eri silk or Inadi silk. And that Eri silk is also what is referred to as peace silk. Because of all the various different processes of production, you'll find that it is only in the case of Eri silk where the silkworm is not killed in the process. Right? So this is extracted without killing the silkworm. Now, this is also used for apparels and merchandises. Now, observe here few of the important facts. First of all, observe the portion where this tassar silk is to be grown. Observe the regions where tassar silk is grown. Now, these are traditionally not very, in the sense, not very economically developed areas, right? The economically lagging areas or the laggards, it is in those areas. So, for example, where you have a lot of tribal population, where you don't have enough infrastructure, where you don't have proper connectivity, in those areas, if you want to increase the income of the population, you can always encourage them to produce tassar silk. Because obviously, all that you need is basically the silkworm and some basic skill level training. And by that, you can always increase the income level of the people living in these parts of the country. So, whenever you come across any kind of a different question altogether, that in these particular areas, the hill states of the country or the tribal section of the country, how do we better the social standards or the economic standards of the population? You can always give these kinds of options available. And that is where your knowledge and information of geography will come to your advantage, because the rest of the candidates, they will be talking about providing the aspect of better education, providing better connectivity, etc., which you will also provide. But along with that, you will be able to provide that they can be encouraged to carry out sericulture in significant majority, production of tasar silk can be carried out, and in that the income will be augmented. Okay, so always have these kinds of suggestions in your answer. Tasar sari is very costly and famous in Bengal. Is it of low quality? So see, Tasar silk is not the most prized silk that you will get. However, nowadays, in order to process that silk is now processed significantly more in order to find, or in order to have a cloth manufactured out of it. That is why the price is a bit higher, right? But traditionally tasar has always been used as traditionally, when that much processing facility was not available, it has always been used for interior decorations and curtain covers. And for example, let's say you have any kind of furniture, so furniture coverings, so for that aspect tasar has been traditionally used. However, nowadays, because of that oncoming processing infrastructure which is coming, newer technologies which is coming, that tasar is further utilized, it is further processed, softened significantly, and then the sari is made out of it. It is significantly costly, and because the entire process is very costly. Okay, in the region of Bengal, Shubhajit, actually, if you try to get muga silk, that is the one which will be actually very, very costly, right? Muga gets very costly, the high end of it. So that is the aspect of silk. Now, after this, we come to the portion of irrigation. What is irrigation? Irrigation basically is when you provide water to the crops by artificial methods, not by rainwater, not by any other factor, but by artificial methods. Irrigation has always been important for increasing the agricultural productivity. If you flip through the pages of history, and if you are interested in history, I'm sure you are, so you would observe that historically, growth and sudden growth of civilizations, sudden growth of various kingdoms, the rise of various kingdoms, many of the time, is intricately linked with agriculture. For example, I'm sure you would have heard about the Byzantine civilization, one of the most mightiest of the civilizations. It was a successor to what? To the Roman civilization. In the present day region around Turkey, that is where the Byzantines, they had the significant foothold. Now, these Byzantine civilization, they brought about a newer method of irrigation, what is referred to as aqueducts. Even today, if you go to the region of Italy, Turkey, etc., you'll find a very wide network of aqueducts. Aqueducts means the ducts which will carry water, the, the passage which will carry water. And these aqueducts were basically very, very intricately designed and very long network. They could carry water from the nearby river and they could take it to the farmland. That significantly increased their income. When the Turkish invaders came to India and you had the conditions of the Delhi Sultanate, at that point of time, you had a significant agricultural augmentation which was done. Why? Because they brought in newer methods of irrigation, for example, the Rahat system, whereby you have that kind of a spinning wheel of buckets. So that bucket goes under or in a well, it carries water, pours it into a pipeline or a duct, and that puts it into the field. As simple a mechanism as that had the potential to increase crop production significantly. Then I'm sure you would have studied about the Tughlaqs. Now, when the Tughlaqs came in, they also basically the if you take the case of Firoz Shah Tughlaq is credited with building of the first canal across the banks of river Satluj. So that is where whenever irrigation has been provided, it has significantly helped the prosperity of agriculture. So irrigation is very, very important. Even historically, when you come to the portion of modern history, you would have studied that during the 1800s, particularly the 1860s, 70s, 80s, and so on. The growth of the state of Punjab, which now lies in the portion of Pakistan, that particular stretch of Punjab which lies in Pakistan. So that was the agriculturally productive region of Punjab, because you had a lot of canal networks which were built by the British, taking water in those particular areas. So that is where agricultural prosperity came in. It is a different matter altogether that during partition, all of that area went to Pakistan, and the portion of Punjab that we got, that was not very fertile. Immediately after independence, that is where the government, it started working on building canals at a relentless pace, and that is where the canal systems in Punjab, Haryana, Western UP, they were developed very significantly in the initial stages of independent India itself. Canal irrigation dominated the entire irrigational method up till the 60s. From 60s onwards, you had the development of the other method or predominance of other method of irrigation, that was the tube well. What is a tube well? It is different from a normal well. In the case of a normal well, you dig a large hole into the ground and you extract water from that hole by a very physical method, mechanical method. So you dip a bucket or a carrying container and it extracts the groundwater from the well. In the case of a tube well, you dig a hole, a kind of a hole, not very large, but a hole which connects it to the groundwater table. And with the help of a mechanical motor, you are able to extract that groundwater. Now, when this tube well started becoming prevalent, it was very popular and it still is very popular with the farmers. Because now you don't have to be dependent on, let's say, any government official to give you the connection to a canal. Now you don't have to be dependent on what will be the rainfall, because now whenever you want, you with the switch, on switch, you can get the supply of water. So that tube well form the most predominant method of irrigation used in different parts of the country. It is in the past decade and so that newer methods of irrigation are coming in. For example, you have the sprinkler irrigation. Sprinkler irrigation. Now, I'm sure you would have seen the sprinklers in real life in the farmland, or if not in the farmland, I'm sure you would have seen a hockey match, a football match, a cricket match, or any of these sporting events. You will find these small sprinklers which spray water all around, or in the garden nearby that you go, there also you'll find these sprinklers. The sprinklers, their purpose is to imitate the natural rain, because whenever you carry out irrigation, let's say by a canal or by a tube well, you are overutilizing the water, or in a way you are wasting that water. That much water is not required by the plants. So sprinkler imitates that natural rain. So what is done is that you have a piped supply of water. Okay. And that piped supply is spread across to the ground. Here you have the small sprinkler system. And as the sprinkler rotates, that water is sprayed all across the farmland. Right. So here you have not only an imitation of rainfall, you basically are able to prevent the issues of over irrigation observed in certain areas. Excessive irrigation, excessive cultivation, that is not observed or that is not experienced. So that is basically the sprinkler. You also have what is drip irrigation. Now, drip irrigation forms or functions on a very basic principle. And that basic principle is, let's suppose if I have a plant here, if I have a plant here, if I have a plant here. So water will be required in this region, and in this region only. Why do I need to waste water by pouring water in between? So that is the exact principle involved behind drip irrigation. That drop by drop, you apply water directly to the roots of the plants. Okay, drop by drop, you apply water directly to the root. So how it functions basically is, let's suppose you have this as the farmland. Okay, now on top of the farmland, let's suppose you have crops which are growing. Let's suppose. And on top of that, a pipe is laid stretching across the entirety of the region. You have a laying of a pipe. A pipeline is laid across the entirety of the region. A very thin pipeline. Okay. And water is supplied into that pipeline. Water is supplied into the pipeline. Small perforations are made where the roots exist. And drop by drop, it gives that water into the roots. So in this way, you ensure targeted delivery of water. And in a way, you are also able to conserve water. Now, in regions of Eastern Maharashtra would be one of those areas. If you if you go through the archives of newspapers around 15 years back, 16, 17 years back, you would always come across news story that large-scale farm suicides have occurred in Eastern Maharashtra because of crop failure. Now, when the problem was investigated and when the problem was actually understood, it was understood that Eastern Maharashtra in general receives lesser rainfall. Now, when it receives lesser amount of rainfall, thereby whatever water is available needs to be used judiciously. And on top of that, the farmers, they are growing traditionally the crop of sugarcane, which requires high amount of moisture. So there is always that prospect of crop failure looming over their head. That is when the administration, and this is why UPSC wants you to study geography. The administration, including the bureaucrats, they came upon a decision whereby you had those particular crops which did not require much rainfall, for example, millets, they were promoted. The farmers were nudged to grow these kinds of crops. And when the farm loans were being given out, there was a condition that we will give you more money provided you install sprinkler or drip irrigation. So that is where overall you had the implementation of it in very large areas. Still, there is a lot more to be done, but that in itself has brought about significant amount of water conservation. Now, in the case of drip irrigation, sometimes what is done is even water soluble fertilizers, they are also passed through the drip irrigation. So there also you have a targeted delivery of fertilizers which are taking place. And that is a process which is referred to as fertigation. Fertigation. Fertigation is what? Fertilizer plus irrigation. So only the water soluble fertilizers, they are applied there and they are allowed to pass through. So that is what you have as fertigation. Okay. Now let us take a look at few of the traditional relevant methods of irrigation. So the method of irrigation is dependent on the ground topography as well. For example, when we, let's say, have the ground as very hard, plateau region, right? Think about the Peninsula Plateau. Now, in the Peninsula Plateau, the ground is very hard, very rocky, very thick. Now, in that, what do you think? Digging of tube wells will be easy? Absolutely not. Digging of canals will be easy? Absolutely not. So what will be easy? Maybe put some stones nearby, the excess accumulated water, build a tank, right? Now, similarly, let's say the same principle you use in Uttar Pradesh, where you have fertile alluvial soil, significant thickness of alluvial soil. Now, in that region, if you just barricade a region with stones and allow that excess water to be stored, what do you think will happen? All that water will seep underneath the soil, isn't it? Because it is alluvial soil, it is not the hard rocks. So that is why the nature of topography or the topography of a region, that is very instrumental in determining the type of irrigational practice that you come across in any particular area in general. That is basically the source of irrigation that you come across. So here, this is the idea for you that overall well and tube well irrigation, they are the most predominant method of irrigation observed across the different parts of the country. Well and tube well irrigation, they are the most predominant ones. Okay, and this has been a trend which has caught on after the 60s in general. So this is a prime difference between a well and a tube well. So well is where you, in both of these cases, you dig a hole up till the level of the groundwater. In the case of the well, you extract that water by a mechanical process, a physical process, right? In case of a tube well, you install a pump or a motor, and that will carry out the extraction process. Okay, so here you are able to extract water from a deeper portion because the pump will operate. You don't have to pull it on your own. So there's a greater efficiency of water extraction in the case of tube wells. Okay, so these are the regions where wells and tube wells will be found to be dominant. Majorly, you will find to be them to be present across the areas of the plains and wherever it is easier to dig. If you walk around in the region around Bangalore, for example, yes, tube well is very similar to that of a bore well, a very similar functioning. Is well digging good for the soil of the region? It does not impact the soil significantly unless and until you over extract the water. If you over exploit the water, as is done in the northern part of the plains, then it is not beneficial. That will lead to arsenic poisoning, uranium contamination, and so on. But then, overall, there's not much of an impact because you are digging only in the initial portion. So, if you move around the region of Peninsular Plateau, you will come across endless scenarios. For example, in the city of Bangalore, you'll come across endless scenarios where there is a digging of a bore well which is being done, or a tube well for that it is being done, but there is no water to be found because due to over exploitation, water level, particularly in the plateau region, is very, very low. In the northern plains, the water is available at a shallower depth itself. Okay, then the canals. Now, canals used to be the most important source of irrigation up till the 60s, but in the 70s, you had the portion of tube well taking over, as we have seen. Now, with the case of canal irrigation, you had multiple issues, multiple problems. The first problem was that it used to be, or it was very costly, a very costly endeavor. Okay, digging up the canal from the point of inception of the program to the point of implementation, it is very, very costly. And any project which is very costly is prone to leakages. For example, it was found out shockingly that many of the canals on the paper which have been implemented in the region, particularly Eastern UP and Bihar, ideally on paper, they were implemented in the late 70s and 80s itself. When it was found out in the 2000s that why is it that these regions are experiencing shortage of water, it was found that many of the canals, they are only on paper, they are not present on the ground. So there was a leakage. The bureaucrats, the politicians, they had a jolly good time, right? So that is where the costly endeavor was a drawback. It would take a very long time to construct a canal, very long time. You would have come across a news story that last year you had a canal in Uttar Pradesh which was inaugurated, which would take water from the river Saryu. Now that canal, the construction of it, the planning of it rather, The planning of it started in late 70s and the construction of it was completed in 2022. Think about it. Shah Jahan took only 22 years to build Taj Mahal. We took almost twice the time to construct a canal. So the time consumed was so humongous. The money consumed was so humongous. So it was a lose lose scenario. Then you also had a scenario or a situation, another problem, where in the canal, the water which was present, that water would be lost due to evaporation significantly. Now, that would also mean lower supply of water in the canals throughout the year. And that would never help the farmers also. So, even despite being very costly, it was not a solution. So, very costly, time consuming, land acquisition problem, land acquisition problem, issues. Then, evaporation was a major issue. Right. Now, for evaporation, obviously, you would have looked at it also that Gujarat found a very innovative solution in order to prevent that. And whenever you come across these innovative solutions, make it a point to bring it to your answer copy or your answers in some matter or the other. And that is basically what the Gujarat government did was they started covering these canals. Now, Gujarat experiences very high amount of heat, very high amount of solar insolation. So the rate of evaporation is also going to be very, very high. So what Gujarat government did was it started covering the canals with solar panels. And when it was covered with solar panels, that would solve twin purposes. First, those water which was being lost, that would be conserved. And secondly, in from these areas, now you can generate solar energy as well. So that is where canal irrigation now, as per the Pradhan Mantri Krishi Sinchai Yojana for irrigation, you have a program under it, accelerated irrigation benefit program. So that talks about finishing all those legacy canals as soon as possible. You have many canals launched in the region of Bihar, in the region of Uttar Pradesh, ideally which has been launched in the 80s itself, but still nowhere close to completion because that matter has remained in cold storage due to political apathy. So that is where under AIBP, Accelerated Irrigation Benefit Program, the effort is to finish these as soon as possible and then focus on micromanagement of water resource in an area. So now you will not find the government announcing construction of big canals anymore. That used to be a scenario or a perspective that you would come across 25, 30 years back. That used to be the prevalent one, that vote me to power, I'll build a canal. Now nobody promises that. Okay. Now then we have the tank irrigation. So these are the major canal irrigated areas in northern plains: Uttar Pradesh, Punjab, Haryana, Rajasthan and Bihar. Rajasthan, for that matter, the western part of Rajasthan, that benefited significantly from the Indira Gandhi Canal. Now Indira Gandhi Canal would extract water from the river Satluj and would drain and bring about greenery in that area. It would make cultivation possible in that area. Right. But after that, even in the case of Indira Gandhi Canal, there were a lot of teething issues. Water would not be available for a significant proportion. But some changes in the alignments were made, and so that you have reliable water supply in that area. So these are your canal irrigated areas. And then we come across tanks. Tanks are basically storage structures where you basically enclose a particular area and then allow the excess water or the river runoff to be stored to be then later utilized during the dry season. This is a method of irrigation very prevalent, significantly prevalent in the peninsular part of the country. Because in the peninsular part of the country, understand, there are multiple issues at play simultaneously. First, you have a hilly tract, a hilly terrain, hard rocks, so it is not easy to dig. Secondly, so when it is not easy to dig, canals and tube wells become costly. Secondly, when we talk about these tanks in the southern part of the country, you have to understand that based on those hard rocks, it is easy to accumulate water. Then you have a dispersed population. Southern part of the country is not like a high density population that you observe in the northern part of the country. You have disbursement of population, small section of population living in some area, then in very far off place you will have small section of population. So for them, building a canal connecting all these areas is unviable. So that is why individually they can have canal constructed in those areas. That will be a benefit. So that is why it is the preferred method of irrigation in the southern part of the country. Now, in this, again, an innovative solution was brought by the Telangana government. Telangana government, some time back, had launched a particular program which was referred to as Mission Kakatiya. Now, that Mission Kakatiya was very significant because it encouraged people to build more canals, not only to conserve water, but it also allowed the people or encouraged people that do one thing in the storage structure that you're building, grow fishes, rear shrimps and prawns also, carry out pisciculture or aquaculture. So in that methodology or in that process, what the people would be able to do is they would have a kind of an income insurance to fall back upon, that if, let's say, my crops fail, by fishes alone I will be able to make some amount of money by which I can sustain myself. I would not be required to go to a money lender for that matter. So that Mission Kakatiya was also significantly very visionary in that process. So that is basically the aspect of tank irrigation, mostly predominant in the southern stretch of the peninsular part of the country. Okay. Then after that, we talk about agricultural productivity and efficiency in agriculture. So, when we say efficiency in agricultural production, what do we mean by that? That means in the same piece of land, what is the total amount that you are able to grow? That is efficiency in the same piece of land, right? So, for example, let's suppose we have the condition where two farmlands of the same size. One is producing 5 kg of wheat, another in the same farmland is producing 15 kg. So obviously this is going to be much more efficient. So how do we calculate efficiency? The basic yardstick for measuring efficiency is yield per hectare. That what is the productivity per hectare that you are gaining. Now, overall, you'll be surprised to find out that yield per hectare of even those green revolution areas, Punjab, Haryana, and western UP, the yield per hectare in even those areas is almost half of what you observe in many of the European nations, even in China. You observe the yield per hectare to be much greater. Why? Because due to the unsustainable farming practices, over irrigation, over application of fertilizers, we have managed to degrade the soil. The soil level, the quality of soil has degraded beyond reckoning. So there is not much productivity happening anymore. Now, a measure for this yield per hectare is basically cropping intensity. Cropping intensity gives you an idea about how many times a particular agricultural field of land has been brought under cultivation in 1 year. I will repeat. Cropping intensity gives you an idea that in 1 year, how many times have you brought an agricultural piece of land under cultivation? That is cropping intensity. So cropping intensity is gained by gross cropped area divided by net sown area into 100. Gross cropped area is the total area cultivated in 1 year. And when we say net sown area, it is the area of the farmland. Farmland. So, for example, let's suppose I have a farmland. Let's suppose. Now, the size of the farmland, let's suppose, is 1 hectare. Now, I have grown wheat here. Wheat I have grown in 1 hectare. I have grown wheat for the complete 1 hectare. Then, after harvesting wheat, I have grown rice in, let's say, 75% of the land. Rice I have grown in 0.75 hectare. 0.25 hectare I did not use. I did not have enough seeds. I needed some storage space. So 0.25 hectare I did not use in the case of rice. Now, if I have to calculate the cropping intensity of this piece of land, what will be the total cultivated area in 1 year? Total cultivated area will come out to be around 1.75 hectares. Wheat has been grown in the entirety of 1 hectare. What is the area of my farmland? It is 1 hectare. And then I have to multiply it by 100. So cropping intensity will come out to be 175. Right? Means almost the entire field has been used almost twice for cultivation. So when a field is used multiple times for cultivation, that always will give you an idea about the cropping intensity. So you have very high cropping intensity regions. For example, Punjab, Haryana, West Bengal, Tamil Nadu, the coastal stretches of Tamil Nadu, not the western part of Tamil Nadu, the eastern part of Tamil Nadu. There, where you have the Os, Aman, Boro, the three varieties of rice being grown. So there, the cropping intensity is very, very high. Then high cropping intensity between 150 to 175, the plain areas, Malabar coastline, Gangetic coastline, or Gangetic banks. For example, you have UP, Bihar, you have Assam, Brahmaputra plains. They have 150 to 175. Then slowly and steadily, if you come to the hilly tracts, 125 to 150, and eventually low cropping intensity, either in the very dry regions of Gujarat, Rajasthan, Jammu Kashmir, northeastern states, Odisha, Jharkhand, Himachal Pradesh. There you will find the cropping intensity to be very low. Okay, so that also gives us an idea about how many times a farmland is being used and what is the productivity that you can ascribe out of a farmland. So this is an indication of the image as per this cropping intensity. The government of India has got this old map for cropping intensity. Spatial means over a particular space. So space and a variation of space, that is what is spatial. Okay. Then we have agro and social forestry. Agro and social forestry. Basically, the concept of it was again very simple and plain. The concept of it was that, look, and this was conceptualized way back in the late 60s and the early 70s. When you had the entire Stockholm conference and the world movement happening across the world, happening about increasing and protecting the green cover, the forest regions of the world. At that point of time, the government of India was thinking about the fact that how do we increase the region under tree cover? And we have to do something so that we increase the area under green cover or tree cover. And simultaneously, we are able to benefit the local population and the local community as well. So that is when agro and social forestry came into the picture. In the case of agroforestry, typically what you end up doing is, let's suppose this is your farmland, let's suppose. So you end up planting trees on the bordering areas of your farmland, on the bunds of your farmland. Right? you end up planting trees. Okay? Sometimes you plant them in between as well. Now, these trees, they will not only provide a kind of a natural barrier to the farmland, this will have an environmental benefit as well. But at the same time, once they mature, maybe around 5 years, 10 years, the farmer can get significant substantial sum of income out of these trees also. Now, the products of these trees, they can also be used for manufacturing of products, which will be serving or generating employment in the rural sector also. So that was the purpose due to which you had the agroforestry program which was carried out. Observe here. This is a kind of a farmland, and here observe that you have the trees which are grown in that farmland. So that is basically the kind of an objective of social forestry and agroforestry, increasing forest area and restoring the ecological balance, meeting basic rural needs, better returns on income. So it provides a kind of an income support in long run, right? Then it will help control pollution and it will also generate employment in the rural areas. Jay, you had a question. Is this time consuming process due to negligence, efficiency, or inefficiency, or it needs that much of time? So there, it is a combination of both or all three of them. There is definitely political and administrative inefficiency and negligence which is at play. Secondly, you also have to understand that digging that over a long distance. See, China has been able to dig much larger length of canals than what we have dug since independence. China has managed to do that within 5 years or 7 years itself. So it is a matter of inefficiency also. But when you talk about the region around peninsular part of the country, etc., it does take time when you have these plateau hard rocks which are present. Pranay, can we suggest additional income for farmers is growing vegetables and fruits? Absolutely yes. Absolutely yes. Sai Babu, some practice questions. So tomorrow we will be discussing a lot of these multiple choice questions from portion of Indian geography. The previous year questions, we will be discussing that side. Don't worry. Okay. Then we come to the portion of Green Revolution. Green Revolution was carried out purely to augment the food grain production of the country, to increase the amount of food grain production in the country. That is why we had the Green Revolution which happened, which was carried out. So this was to increase the food grains, increase the food grain production. Okay. Now, in this case, here, it did not come to India initially. This was a kind of a theme, a project, a kind of an innovative solution, which was provided, first of all, by William Gadd in order to, when he was addressing a kind of a conference that how to fight off or ward off the problem of food scarcity in various underdeveloped nations, third world countries. That is where he came up with the idea of Green Revolution. So it was termed by Professor William Gadd way back in 1958 in a seminar, Food Crisis in the Third World Countries. Now, basically, the entire aspect of Green Revolution is based on certain basic premises, and that is, look, what is it that the plant requires to grow? Plant requires availability of moisture, availability of nutrients, and proper care, and also the better variety of seeds. That is also very instrumental in plant productivity. So, Green Revolution wanted to cater to all of this. We will provide irrigation to the plants. We will provide the nutrient required by applying fertilizers. Because please understand, application of fertilizers, it is a very new phenomena caught up in the past 50, 60 years only. So we will apply those fertilizers. Then what we will do? We will bring high yielding variety of seeds, different seeds which will give us high amount of yields, not the local variety of wheat and rice, the high yielding varieties we will develop. So this was first of all experimented by Norman Borlaug. Professor Norman Borlaug, he experimented it with the wheat by providing a genetic modification to the seeds of wheat, building a high yielding variety, and thereby he was successful in Mexico. And wheat production doubled in a span of 7 years, and self sufficiency for wheat production was achieved in Mexico. Now, one of the leading doyens or one of the masters of Indian agriculture, you had M.S. Swaminathan. Now, M.S. Swaminathan wanted to implement it in India also. And that is where the very famous story goes, that when M.S. Swaminathan introduced this concept to the bureaucrats, the IAS officers who were running the secretaries in the government, they were absolutely dismissive about it. That this is a kind of, you remember those dialogues that you have in the movies? This is simply impractical, not implementable. It is a kind of a joke, and it was dismissed. Then what M.S. Swaminathan did, he started and he experimented that in his own backyard. And obviously, he had a very good result out of that. So that is when he called those bureaucrats again. And that is when, once they were finally convinced, it was decided to be implemented. But implemented where? Because for this green revolution, you require a set of characteristics. You require availability of irrigation. For irrigation, you need electricity. For that, and also for fertilizer and other things that you will apply, you require good infrastructure. Now, at that point of time, eastern part of India was significantly laggard in that respect. So immediately around the region of National Capital Region, that is Haryana, Punjab, and Western UP, that is where it was implemented. And the results were astounding. Results were encouraging, to say the least. Not only did the farm income increase at an exponential price, at an exponential rate, you also had self-sufficiency of food, which was gained. Basically, if you observe the basis of Green Revolution, which was carried out, high yielding variety of seeds, commercialization of agriculture, purely grow a crop, purely to be sold in the market, no other purpose. Usage of chemical fertilizers, irrigation facilities, mechanization, rural electrification, right? Land holding consolidation that give each of the farmers adequate amount of land that they can carry out cultivation in. Because if you recall, or if you are aware, that after independence, you had still the condition where few of the owners or landlords, they had very large tracts of land, very, very large tracts of land, and the others, they were restricted to marginals. So that is where land consolidation was also done. It was carried out. And then rural credit was given, microfinancing was given, that if you don't have money as a farmer, take a loan, buy those fertilizers at a subsidized rate, get the irrigation done, and have the production. So it is on this basis that Green Revolution actually ended up thriving. But at the same time, this Green Revolution also exposed certain limitations, certain weaknesses. What were the limitations of Green Revolution? That is something that we know in the hindsight, almost after 40, 50 years, 60 years since Green Revolution. So very quickly, I'll talk about the limitations and then we will end the session. So what were the limitations of the Green Revolution? Limitations of Green Revolution. Think about it. Let me know. First limitation, over dependence on high yielding variety of seeds, ignorance of indigenous varieties, local varieties. Which means what? Which means that these seeds, they are more prone to crop failure due to climate change because they are not the local variety. Local variety, it is more resilient to climate change. More resilient to local environment and climate change. Then after that, you had over irrigation, meaning depletion of groundwater, of groundwater. Then over application of fertilizers, and over application of fertilizers leads to what? Decline in soil fertility. Soil fertility. Then excessive reliance or stress on food grains meant ignorance of fruits and vegetables. Then after that, any other thing that we can think of? Income disparity between the farmers in green revolution areas and other parts of the country. Does not mean that the green revolution areas the farmers should have earned less. No. That basically means that the government should have concentrated on other parts of the country as well to bring about a kind of a similar infrastructure activity of irrigation, electrification, etc. So that the farmers in other parts of the country, Maharashtra, Gujarat, Madhya Pradesh, Odisha, Bengal, Bihar, they could also have progressed. They could also have advanced. But as a result of that, you have an inequality which has developed. And that is never healthy for a country. If you have a regional disparity which develops, that is never healthy for a society. That means you will always have migrant laborers and migrant issues. And that will always lead to some tension and pull within the society. That is why the government for the last decade and so has been contemplating the program that will take away the good points and also keep in mind the lacking points or the disadvantages indicated by Green Revolution in a program that is PGREI, that is bringing Green Revolution to Eastern India. Green Revolution to Eastern India. Yes, Nitin, that can also be thought to be as one of the disadvantages. When you have over application of fertilizers, this also has health issues, health impact. Okay, so that is over irrigation, over application. So over irrigation is also going to lead to saline soil formation, soil degradation in general. So these are basically the limitations exhibited due to green revolution. So that is where I'll end the session here today. And tomorrow we initiate the discussion about agroclimatic zone and organic farming. And tomorrow we meet for the last and the final time for this session. And tomorrow we will be discussing about the portion of minerals industries population, and we will have a preview about the maps also, that how should we cover the portion of the maps, what should be the approach when we are going to cover the portion of maps. So that will be the portion or the agenda for tomorrow. So that is where we'll end the session. I hope the session has been productive enough. So till we meet again tomorrow, take care of yourself. Goodbye and have a good night. Thank you.